Good morning. Welcome to Washington Park United Church of Christ. I am not Tom Lures. I'm Lee Berg. I'm the pastor, and it is good to be back and always good to come home. So thank you to all of you who have filled in and helped out and led things while I've been out recovering from surgery. That's going well. I come equipped with a back brace for another 4 or 5 more weeks probably, but I'm really doing well, and thank you for your support and your prayers. That said, we've got a lot of things to cover today, so we're looking forward to that, looking forward to being together. And Jim, if you'll come lead us in John Leptak. I'm sorry, John, you have timeline moment first. No.
So as a former moderator of this church, I took the privilege of not following instructions. And so I'm not going to talk about a single moment. I want to talk about a couple of moments. And I'd like some audience participation. So everybody raise your hand if you know who Amy is. Okay. Amy, she left. All right. But you know who she is. So hands up, keep them up. Okay. So now keep them up as long as you know who I'm talking about. Before Amy, who was before Amy? We had Eric. If you know who Eric is, you keep your hand up. Before Eric, there was Luke. Before Luke, there was Rosanna. Before Rosanna, Thelma. And guess what? I don't know who came before Thelma. But there was people, because we've been in business for a long time. Allison, who was before Thelma? There were a bunch of people who filled in. You filled in multiple times. Barb Decker's mother, Sylvia, filled in. There's a lot of that, but I don't know who came before Sylvia. For me, before Sylvia is Rolf Woodstrand and other people in Minnesota. The important thing is that we have been through change like this, and we have continued to be a church. Thelma played the organ a lot, and the people who came after her didn't play the organ as much. Eric liked to play guitar. Not everybody played guitar. Rosanna played the flute, and we were very, we had got a lot of stuff out of that flute playing, because occasionally we would, get other people to play with her too. The point is that things changed, but they still remained a church. Whether we have an organ or a piano or a flute, we are still a community church. That's why it's a congregational church, because what is important are these people here. So, there's multiple moments, but one theme.
Good morning. I'm Jim Davidson, your reader for today, and please join me in a call to celebration. The voice of God proclaims of Jesus, "You are my beloved, and I love you."
We too are God's beloved children, loved and embraced.
With all the voices reminding us that we are not enough or don't belong, it is tempting to forget our place in God's kingdom.
With water's baptism and the voice of God's promises, we can face the temptations of any wilderness or desert that draws us away from the source of our hope.
Embrace your belovedness. We rejoice in God's unending love for us. Well, howdy shucks, that was inspiring. We were all, that was quite great singing. Our first reading for today is from 1 Corinthians. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different forms of service, but the same Creator. To each individual, gifts are given for the benefit of the community. The different gifts of each person are brought together and create an effective, caring, and loving community. There are many members, but one community. Second reading is an anonymous quote. Great things are done by a series of small things that are brought together. If everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success.
Hello. We just a little shift in the programming today. We want to take a moment now before we enter into our information sharing to think about those who have gone before us. And so in a prayerful manner, I invite you to think about those who have been part of the church before and just mention their names.
Jane McClure, Carol Williams,
Don Knapp.
Winifred and Bob Peterson,
Harry J. Johnson,
Joshua West,
Yes.
Brandon Rose,
Bruce McKenzie,
Bruce Ingalls, Richard Twyman, Nancy Rosas,
Forrest White Rabbit,
Elaine Harvey,
Nancy Charles Burton,
Alice Meehan,
Emily Passler, Tommy Thompson,
Howard, Kate, and Brian Lewis, Tucker Henderson,
Jim Peck,
most of the kids who were teenagers and went on to the youth group, week-long trip.
Sean Taylor, she's still here.
Right. That's why I said most. Malcolm Himshoot.
Thanks for remembering and sharing all those people. And Part of the legacy of the church is those who have gone before us and those of us who are still part of this community. And prayerfully, we are grateful for all of us and all those we mentioned this morning. And if you think of other people along the way, just remind us at some point. Thank you. So today, the readings were about unity. And what we're doing today is part of our path toward the future of this church, this community. And we do it best, I believe, if we do it together. So what we hope to accomplish today is greater unity by greater understanding, greater information, and each of us listening to each other. If we can do that, I think we will meet the future together as supportive of one another. And so what we're going to do today is share information that we have gained this past week, both about this property and also about Mosaic. We've had a lot of meetings this past week, learning more and more about what we need to know to make the future good for this community. And I just want to thank again the people who have been very involved. Somebody told me they went to 6 meetings on Thursday, all about the church and its future. So that's the level of commitment we have in people. And many people are on committees that are trying to create again a future that is very fitting and loving and caring for each other and for those who are beyond our community here. So I'm going to invite, we're very happy today to have our realtor with us, Russ. But before that, Kathy, do you want to come up? Kathy is the one who is running our Next Steps program.
Well, I'm actually going to invite everybody to take a little break to get some food, some drink. We're going to rearrange the sanctuary a little and pass out some papers and invite you when you return to this room to try and sit in one of the front rows if there's room enough for everybody. So take about 5-10 minutes. There's refreshments out here. Use a restroom, get some coffee, and then come back in and we'll be ready to begin. So it looks like almost everybody is back. But there's still some folks in the other room. Why don't you join us? Thank you for your patience, those of you who are online. Okay. So there are basically 2 primary areas where we have some new information that we want to share with you today. And those agenda items are related to the Mosaic campus. There's a conversation with folks from Archway this week, and information in regards to the sale of our properties. again, some meetings in the last couple of weeks. And so our goal here today really is to share that information, to take some questions and comments. In addition, we have some new chart paper up over here where we would like you to put some of your questions and comments, especially if you either don't get to be heard today or are one of those people who are less comfortable asking questions or posing comments in a larger group. So on your pew are some materials. There's some sticky notes, so you can write questions and comments on those and put them on the appropriate paper. There's also a yellow and a lavender sheet of the information that's going to be shared and talked through today. So we recognize there are many feelings in the room about this transition to our future and the changes it brings. And so I invite you to take a minute to turn to someone who is near you and share what your feelings are today about this transition. Take a minute to do that. I'm tired.
Maybe they could put comments in chat.
If you're online and you'd like to, go ahead and put what you're feeling in the chat. If you open the chat, those of you who are online, you'll also notice there is a link to the information that's going to be shared today. Okay, I'm going to ask you to bring your conversations to a close. So as we begin, I'm going to request that we create a place that feels psychologically safe for all of us today. And I'm going to ask that we do that by being mindful of each other's feelings, being mindful of the amount of time we speak, being mindful of the way we invite others to contribute, and listening to each other with open minds. Maggie and others will be sharing the new information about the Archway potential relationship and the Mosaic campus first. And I ask that you hold your questions until after she is done. Jot them down on the sticky notes or on your paper, if that helps. And then there'll be a time for questions and comments regarding Archway. And there's also a chart paper over there for questions and comments regarding Archway. Then our real estate agent will share the new information regarding our properties. And once that information is shared, again, we'll have time for questions and comments and sticky notes. So the information that Maggie is going to talk a little bit about is on your yellow paper. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the yellow paper, take a minute to look at that now, and then Maggie will come and talk through it.
All right, I'm going to get started. So thanks to everyone for being here today. I put this together I put kind of this timeline together first because I think we haven't had many updates regarding Archway and our potential move to the Founders Hall bookstore. So I just wanted to let you know that some things have been happening and they're very kind of important and vital things. We meet with Archway in October. We had a Zoom meeting, and after that meeting, we transmitted all of our questions about the lease, about the space and the lease to them. And I think after Archway's internal discussions, they realized that they needed to get in touch with their primary funder and make a request to change their plan. And so I don't understand a whole lot about creating affordable housing. I know some other people do, and unfortunately our other realtor partner, Chuck, is skiing with his kids this weekend because he understands a lot about it. But the Urban Land Conservancy owns the land on the Mosaic campus, and they have a lease with Archway for the ground space for the buildings for about 99 years, I think. And Archway owns the buildings that they are renovating, which are the old dormitories for the Colorado Women's College, which was later the Johnson and Wales College. And so there's a lot of different funding mechanisms that go along with getting that done. And there are several funders. The primary funder is the person, I guess, who approves all these financial documents and plans. So after these discussions, Archway realized they needed to make a proposal to amend the plans, and they submitted that end of November, early December. And the bank did not get back to them till January. The bank had some questions, Archway answered them, and the bank has given a verbal green light to changing the use of that space. In the original plan, there was no plan for any income to Archway. And so this kind of changes all the financial calculations and documents. So right now, Archway is in the process of amending those documents. They will be submitting them to the bank for review and approval. But everyone thinks that's going to go through. And Archway is comfortable to the point that we can start negotiating a letter of intent, which we should be seeing in the very near future. The way the historical designation works and the way their project funding works, they need to get all the project done and get their certificate of occupancy before we start doing any work in the bookstore. But we can get in touch with their architect and their historical preservation consultant and start talking to them about what changes we can make and how we would accommodate the accessibility, what ADA provisions they already see being in compliance with the American with Disabilities Act and such. Let's see, I'm not going to go through. Scott took very good notes. Where'd he go? Thank you, Scott. There you are. And let's see, some of the highlights. Archway realizes that we're anxious to kind of get moving on their lease, and so that's why they explained kind of what their situation was and why they're haven't been able to give us a lot of answers up till now. Let's see. The Archway investors don't need to improve us leasing, though they know who we are and that we have a connection with Archway, and they've liked that idea. Let's see. In terms of what's historical on the interior, it's the woodworking, the floors, and the wood on the windows. So that the space behind the gathering area that we envision is not historical. I don't have a name for that. Let's see. I think that's about all I have, except that we all will start negotiating a letter of intent, which will lead us to a lease with Archway.
So while the bookstore at Mosaic Campus and the relationship with Archway is currently at sort of the top of our list of places to move, a plan B is also critical to have. If Archway doesn't work out, we need someplace else to go. There's been a lot of research done on places around about. Peter has done a lot of research recently. Hopefully you saw some of that in the February contact. There's even been some more done this week. And he can talk to you more about that if you are interested. But at this time, I'll invite a few minutes of questions or comments in regards to what you have read or heard from Maggie, particularly about Archway, and also invite you to put up some sticky notes or at least write some that you can put up on that chart paper that group can take back. Kathy.
I know one of our questions or our concerns has been accessibility, and I think I read that we can now drive to the south door of that location at Mosaic. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, when we went to visit in October, I drove to the south door, as did a couple other people. There's space to drop off there right by the ramp. There are two parking lots that are relatively close, about 200 paces away or less, and there's plenty of parking, including disabled parking in those places. Do you want to say any more about that? Okay. Heather.
Just for my hearing, I need the mic right up to the lips, please, when you comment.
Thank you, Heather.
I have a question. Just for clarity, are we seeking a long-term lease from Archway, or are we considering a short-term lease in anticipation of maybe merging with another church? What's our current negotiating position with Archway as far as the lease?
I want to do a 5-year lease with then options to renew annually for up to 10 years. We would make that cancelable with a certain amount of notice if we decided to merge with another church and go someplace else.
Perfect, thanks.
And then I have written question. What's the projected date of Archway's certificate of occupancy? They're looking at May for most of the buildings, and they said late May for Founders Hall. Then I have, were any numbers put on the table for the rent? We didn't talk about specific numbers. Scott asked if they would be willing to take a donation up front for no rent for a certain amount of time. They seemed open to that. They will be doing calculations about how much that space costs them to operate. And so we should be expecting to pay our fair share of that. But we don't know what those are at this point.
I just want to remind everyone that there was a fair amount of investigation for alternative to 400 South William Street. We're sharing a lot of information about Mosaic because there are so many questions that were unanswered. And it's not as if we're saying this is the only place that we're considering. We need to remind everyone that there will be a recommendation that after multiple locations are reviewed, a recommendation comes to the Next Steps group. Next Steps then goes to our leadership. Leadership will then determine what location they want to propose for a move. And then we will come together as a congregation and we will vote on that, talk about and vote on that recommendation. If that recommendation does not meet the collective approval, we'll talk about Plan B or alternatives. So this is a congregational vote. It is not something that is destined. It's just that with all of the research that's been done, the Mosaic campus seems to offer more opportunities for us as a faith community to thrive and prosper and to be able to do more work in and for the world. So that's why there's so much information about Mosaic today.
I did also want to mention that Archway asked us if we are interested, or what areas we are interested in having be exclusive use. And so that's one thing we need to talk about as a congregation. So if you have thoughts about that, please write them on the board or let someone in the real estate group know. And by exclusive use, we're kind of talking like, obviously we would have some locked storage space. We would probably want pastor offices to be exclusive, but the gathering space that we'll worship in on Sundays might be able to be used by other people during the week. And we're already doing that now. It's not a big change. And I think we would be asking, we talked about finding out the difference between having the whole space be exclusive in terms of rent costs versus sharing it, so that we would know what that represented. But, I think from a resource standpoint and the fact that we're all wanting to make the best use of the Earth's resources, sharing that space makes sense from that perspective, and it's something we're already doing.
I have a question. If there are like 2 or 3 more options, will we, as the congregation, have access to that information? Or will it only go to leadership and then leadership will give us the choice of one without letting us know what the other options were?
Our intent is to create a comparative matrix, which basically says there are criteria that we consider to be key in selecting a new place. And then we will apply those criteria to the multiple different options. And that comparative matrix will indeed be shared with the congregation. And additional input or questions will certainly be solicited. So it's not, but the process ultimately that has been used before is that a recommendation comes from leadership and congregation votes on it. But people will see the research and the comparison option to option to option.
I just like the whole concept of being a congregation church. And actually having a vote and not just rubber stamping through it.
Yeah, and that's important to everyone. I will point out that the criteria that has been used so far is over here, criteria for new location. It is the criteria that was used this summer when we began to look for other places and continues to be used. And one thing we want is for you to take a look at that and add anything that you think is missing. I'll also mention, we continue to have questions that aren't answered yet. We will have more of these meetings. As soon as we get information, we will share answers. Is there anyone online who would like to ask a question about Archway?
So I would like to just say that Kathy and I took a trip over there yesterday and enjoyed our walk with the melting snow and everything. Everything was kind of deserted, and things were kind of off limits with fencing and stuff like that. But I would recommend that people go over there and walk around and see the school that is already there and kind of envision what that place might look like with families and people all over the place, kind of like a college campus, and the coffee shop and the restaurant, the Helping Hen restaurant that they have to offer meals and things like that. So I would just invite people to take some time and walk around, not just Founders Hall, which you can't even get into without a key, but walk around the campus and see what Denver School of the Arts looks like and things like that on that whole big campus. Thanks.
I did take a picture when Randy and I were there yesterday of the map, and there's some copies of it back there on the round table in case you want to take a look at that. I think in part, in answer to your question, we've been discussing as a next steps team the best way to vote when it comes time. What we want to avoid is like a split. If we have place A, place B, and place C, and we're voting on all of those at the same time, that's likely to cause a split. And so what we hope for is to vote on one place. Initially, if that's voted down, then then we would be likely to go to option B, where you will have already seen that information as well, but we haven't made a decision exactly how that vote will go. So we want some input on that, and it would be appropriate to put sticky notes down about that.
Kathy? Hi.
Hi, Heather.
On my own, I just went over there and walked around. I think a lot of people know that. And just wanted to see what it was like. It was, first of all, beautiful. And then there was all of these women, young women, and they were just having, I couldn't help but giggle. They were giggling so hard. And then I started giggling. But, there was just such joy there. This is really, I don't know. I feel so hopeful, not only because it's beautiful, but what I saw was joy.
Thanks, Heather. So I'm going to move us on to the next topic in the agenda. Your lavender sheet has information about these properties, and I'm going to invite Russ from Guide Real Estate up to talk you through that, and he and others can answer your questions as well.
Close to the face, got it. Remind me if I missed that. But thank you for having me. My name's Russell Gelman. I'm part of the realtor team that was selected to help, facilitate the sale of the church and the parcels around it. So I was going to cover a few things. First, a little bit about me and my partner, who's also facilitating the sale. Talk a little bit about the real estate market, and then talk a little bit about, how we've gotten to where we are today, as far as, the RFP, the responses, and then the offers that we have on the table. So first, a little bit about me. So I work at Guide Real Estate. I'm a residential realtor. I was the 6th highest producing agent at my brokerage in 2023. I also can speak the investment lingo. So I own 8 rental properties myself, 7 in the Denver metro area, and I'm working on a duplex development at Sloan's Lake that we're supposed to be breaking ground, fingers crossed, in April or May. So my partner, Chuck Moore, unfortunately isn't able to be here, but whereas I bring the residential real estate experience, he brings a little bit more of the commercial and the development experience. So Chuck is a principal at GM Development and also owns a brokerage called Modus Real Estate. So he's done over 60 developments in the Denver metro area that span the gambit of, everything you can do in development. So ground up development, adaptive reuse where he takes, a property and uses it for something else, or designating something as a historic building and, keeping the building and, taking tax credits for, remodeling it essentially. So the value that at least Chuck and I think that we provide as a team is basically spanning the gambit of, residential real estate, commercial real estate, development, and then just overall investment experience. So there's multiple different people who would be applicable buyers for, the 3 lots that we're talking about, the vacant lot, the church, and then the parking lot. And, no matter what offers come in or buyers present to us, either Chuck or I have had experience dealing with that type of buyer to be able to, walk away ideally with highest net proceeds for the church. So that's a little bit about us, a little bit about the real estate market in general. So to me, I always start with kind of a bird's eye overview, and the real estate market at the end of the day is just the relationship between supply and demand. So if you have high supply and low demand, so high number of listings and low number of buyers, then those buyers can negotiate pretty hard against sellers, and we would see depreciation. If you have the opposite, which is what we had in 2020, 2021, then you would see a lot of appreciation because buyers are competing for the same properties. So to speak to a little bit about each of those, supply and demand, closed transactions in 2023 were 42,000 for the Denver metro area. That's lower than what we saw from 2019 to 2022. The average from 2019 to 2022 was 59,000. So we've lost 17,000 buyers. The reason that we've lost 17,000 buyers is that interest rates have gone up. We've all heard about that. So if you were buying, an average price house in Denver, then your mortgage payment would be approximately $1,100, $1,200 more now than it was in 2020 or 2021. And so buyers drop out. They either can't afford the monthly payment or they don't want to afford the monthly payment and they would rather rent. Then speaking to supply, we've also seen that decrease. So people don't really think about it as much, but interest rates also have an impact on that because sellers, they want to move because for some reason they want to move because they don't like their kitchen, and they look at what's out there and then they factor in the comparison between their 3% interest rate that they either have because they bought in 2020 or 2021, or they refinanced in 2020 or 2021, and they say that they would rather remodel their kitchen than move because the business case doesn't make sense. They can afford less house. So we've also seen supply decrease by about 18,000 homes. So we call it in real estate, we call it the golden handcuff of, basically a good problem to have. You have a really low interest rate and you don't want to move because of it, but it keeps supply down. So zooming into the Wash Park real estate market, there's a little bit less data on it, which is why I kind of speak to the Denver metro market at first. But the median close price in 80209 in 2023 was $1,060,000. That's in comparison to Denver Metro's 578. So, it's a very affluent buyer who's purchasing in this area, and there's actually been appreciation. So we saw 1.7% depreciation in 2023 for the overall Denver Metro, but in Wash Park we saw 7% appreciation, which is wild. It was actually the fourth highest appreciating zip code in the Denver metro area. And the logic behind that is just, affluent buyers have ways that they can circumvent the higher interest rates. They can either pay it because they can afford it, or they put more money down to, basically offset the monthly payment. So those numbers are just, the appreciation to me tells me that, the Wash Park real estate market is very resilient. People want to live here, and they don't care what it costs to live here. They're going to make it work because it's an incredibly desirable place to live. Then if you look at average close price, which is a little different than median, average takes a little bit more into account the individual home sales. So overall in Denver, that typically hovers about $100,000 above median close price. In Wash Park, it's $345,000 higher. And the logic behind that is just, it basically makes a great business case for developers purchasing and building here, because there are comps that support significantly higher sales prices. A builder can build a $3 million, $4 million, $5 million house in this area, and there are buyers who will buy it, as opposed to some of the other areas in Denver that have slowed down. And there also just aren't very many places left to do that in Wash Park. So those lots, those parcels become a lot more desirable. And then the third data point that I would hit on is just number of closed transactions. So closed transactions in Wash Park are down 23%, as opposed to Denver Metro, which is down 18%. And that just basically says that people are building their forever home here. So people, this is exactly where they want to live. There's no real reason to move away from Wash Park. So even, when there are unfavorable economic conditions to move, they'll just stay put and be happy because they're already in the place that they want to be. So that's a little bit about the real estate market at a glance, both Denver Metro and the Wash Park market. Diving into the process and how we got to where we are. So the work group has worked incredibly hard. They sent out an RFP to realtors who responded to that RFP with basically, how they would facilitate the sale, what their experience is, things like that. That was due December 8th. After that, the work group conducted interviews with multiple of the realtor teams, and eventually, in mid-January, selected Chuck and I to represent the church. Once we were selected, I reached out to all of the other realtors and all of the interested buyers who had heard about the sale of the church through various different avenues, whether that's a congregation member or another realtor who responded to the RFP, or the preschool, or however they heard about it, and just kind of kept them up to date, with our plan, which ended up being, the plan was to list on the MLS, and once you guys had found a place to move, whether that's the Mosaic or somewhere else. But at the same time, if anybody wants to submit just any exceptional offers, we would consider them. There are a few priorities that the church found, or the work group had, communicated to us as most important. The two most important being, highest and most proceeds from the sale, and then the second one being flexibility, not knowing where you're going to go yet. If somebody's going to submit an offer ahead of the timeline that you guys originally had wanted to sell, it needs to have the flexibility to be able to stay in, this location until you figure out where you want to go. So we did actually receive some surprisingly good offers. At least Chuck and I think that they're pretty great offers. And the logic behind that, that being that we didn't list on the MLS, and therefore we never submitted, a list price out to people of what, the church believes that the parcels are worth. And, didn't set the price for the buyers. We made the buyers come up with their own price of what they value the parcels at. And, in this market, which is slowing down, you don't see, like we did in 2020, 2021, you don't see, hundreds of thousands of dollars above asking price anymore. It's just less common. So we had offers that kind of span the gambit of basically both price and terms, but they all consistently align with what the church's goals are, which is highest proceeds and most flexibility. So to give you an example of some of the terms that we've seen in some of the offers, like a close date of December, but the ability for the church to call for an earlier closing if they would like to, or a lease for the space until the church and the preschool find another place to go. Or, if it's a December close, that's a long time for a lot of things to happen. So earnest money, which is kind of like your, deposit, earnest money going hard and being released to the church after a 14-day inspection window, just to make sure that, that buyer is really concrete and cement and going to, be more likely to make it to the closing table, or they lose, tens of thousands of dollars. So a little bit, I also wanted to touch on just kind of what makes this transaction a little bit different than your average, residential home sale, because, that's what a lot of people have experience with. So the buyer's intentions are different with this. So, if it's a very affluent buyer that, wants to buy a parcel and build their forever home, then, they don't really care. They're not as price sensitive to what it's worth, because they're going to live there for forever. It doesn't matter. Or a developer who, is trying to make a profit at the end of the day. So he's accounting for variables like, potential demolition costs, or what comparable properties have sold for and build costs, things like that. So just, different buyers than your average, residential buyer that's going to buy a house and, live in it for the existing structure. And then, we touched on not listing on the MLS, so not setting that kind of, sentiment in the buyer's eyes of what the property is worth. And then closing timeline is a little bit different. So there are a lot of offers that have been, we're more likely to get cash offers for parcels like this. And so there are different due diligence items, and there's less to worry about as far as loan contingencies or appraisal contingencies. So just a little bit different process. But that's really all that I had. So thank you. Thanks for letting me join. It's been an exciting service.
Yeah, why don't you stay nearby in case there's questions that people have that you can answer, or Maggie can answer some questions. Questions for Russ. Thank you, Glenn.
Yes, on the second page, the third bullet, I told the multiple interested buyers that we plan to list on the MLS once the location for the church to move has been selected and confirmed. So I'm wondering, does that mean that you anticipate that we would have a signed lease before we would list and sell the property? So I'm wondering, what does that mean?
At this point, Russ and Chuck are starting a negotiating process with the offers we have. There are deadlines in those offers. We plan to go back and let the potential buyers know that we can't agree to accept an offer until our leadership team approves the offer. So there will be some wiggle room in there where we do, the real estate team will recommend to the Next Steps team, and the Next Steps team will recommend to the leadership team, and the leadership team will make a decision since the congregation has already voted to sell the church. But we're trying to put things in the offer, we're trying to put some things like that in the offer to protect us. And that's also why we're going to be really focusing on what our plan B is in case plan A, which is Mosaic, doesn't work out.
But the point is that it is very possible and most likely that we will sign a contract with buyer or buyers, but we will only do that if we are in a position to control the entire contract, and our ability to stay here until we know where we're going is a part of that contract. But we will get the best money from the best offers, because that is something we voted as a congregation for in August to physically sell. But we will, and originally Russ and Chuck said, we want to go to the multi-listing service because, boy, then there could be more offers. But the surprising offers that surfaced were so strong and so free of contingencies and based in cash that going to the MLS would probably not give us more money, because people see a listed price and then they say, well, I'm going to go $100,000 under that, and maybe I can get a deal. And we don't want a deal. We want a good offer.
And there is another thing we need to be mindful of, and that is that we have notified the ELC that we will be selling the building, and the ELC has found another location and are working on moving there. So once they get that cemented and they move out, we lose their rent money and our financial position becomes more untenable. We voted, my feeling is we voted in August and to sell, and that's the reason we've got plan A where we might want to go. We're working on that, and we're going to be working to cement a plan B as well, because the reality of staying in this building for a very long time is probably not realistic given our financial situation. And I also think we need to realize we're leaving a really wonderful place, and hopefully the place we're going to go to is really wonderful, but there's going to be differences, and even this place isn't perfect in a lot of ways.
Kathy.
Pardon me, because I stepped out of the room for a second. Were the offers we got much higher than we would have put in the multi-listing if we had?
Want to speak to that or me? Chuck and I think that they're very good offers. I think that the work group obviously, interviewed quite a few realtors, and so they got, quite a few different opinions on what the various parcels are worth. And Chuck and I at the end of the day, we wouldn't be recommending considering them, because at the end of the day, we're just here to facilitate the transaction and try to help you meet your goals, if they weren't phenomenal offers. So they're very good.
I think for some folks, this feels like it's moved pretty quickly from 3 weeks ago when we had our semi-annual meeting to now. And what I realized as I read through some of the information is that when an offer is put in, they want to hear back from the offer. And generally that's yes, no, maybe, let's talk, something along those lines. And that's part of what's driving trying to get to yes, I guess. And that's just part of the process that I had forgotten about because it's been a while since I've bought a house.
I also wanted to mention, in terms of the fact that this might seem sudden, these offers are from people who learned about us selling the church when we let the preschool know in August. So they've been waiting 6 months to offer, thinking about it and getting ready to offer for 6 months. So for them, they've been waiting a long time. So there's different perspectives on time. So I want you to realize what some of the offerers' perspectives are.
Dorothy.
Do we know when ELC will move?
My understanding is end of August is what they've asked to be able to stay that long. Is that correct?
Just because I talked with them, they know that the agreement that we signed with them, the lease, was August 31st. They would be out. But if we stay longer, they're willing to perhaps stay longer if they don't have their new site all prepared and licensed. But August 31st is what we agreed to.
Kathy, and then we'll see if there's anybody online who has questions or comments.
So there's 3 parcels. I'm sure some of these offers were for 1 parcel. Just help me understand the offers and 3 parcels.
Yeah, so, as people have reached out, through the hearing about this, however they heard about it, I've been collecting a list of interested buyers, and those buyers range from, people that want to build their dream home to developers who see this as 4 buildable lots that they can build in Wash Park and sell for a profit to, other churches that are interested, they're expanding and need another place to go. Or one person who was interested in potentially turning it into some sort of a venue, which would never happen, but we have a variety of different interested buyers. I think that each one of them brings a different dynamic. So the interested buyer who wants to build their dream home, a little bit less price sensitive, just they want to live in the location that they want to live, and yeah, that would be one, most likely that would be one parcel that they would be buying. And a developer would be, developers have been more interested in, either all 3 or just a few of them, but are more interested in, the church structure as it stands, because the church is sitting on 2 buildable lots. So, dream home buyer wouldn't be interested in paying the price typically that they'd have to pay for the 2 buildable lots. They'll just take the 1. So we have a variety, but and a business case for each of them to buy that's different.
Are there questions or comments from folks online? Okay.
Hi.
And Christine.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify one quick thing. You may have answered this, but I just need to get it straight. So is there potential for more than one buyer, like, up to 4 different contracts for the spaces that we have available now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, we can likely sell the parcels individually, which is, or not necessarily individually, but there could be more buyers, and if that's what it takes to get highest and most proceeds and best flexibility for you guys to be able to stay in the existing structure, then that's what the work group would likely choose. It's not my decision, so I don't want to say, but they're factoring into account all of those things on that. And yes, most likely we would.
So the process for this decision-making will be like the process was when we sold the parsonage. If you were here, you may recall that we were considering what piece of property that we owned to sell in order to have some money for the church to be sustainable. And the congregation decided to sell the parsonage at that time. And then what at that time was the Board of Governors made the decision and signed the contracts and sold the parsonage. And so tomorrow, I think the real estate team will be meeting. They will be considering the offers that have been brought. They will be making some counter offers that include these important things that Maggie discussed, and make a recommendation for the leadership team to accept or reject those offers. And that could happen in the next couple of weeks for these particular offers. Are there other questions or comments in regards to real estate? Yes, go ahead, Dorothy.
What percent did we negotiate with our realtors?
So Russ is going to correct me if I'm wrong. Each plot has a different percentage rate. And I think it's 1.5% for the parking lot, 2.5% for the 2 church lots, and 1.5% for the 420 lot with the playground.
The logic behind that, at least from Chuck and my perspective, is that there's more due diligence. There's a different type of buyer to buy this church, and so it's more work on our part to sell the church parcel than it is to sell a vacant parking lot and a vacant lot over there.
Okay, so even though we've only had a couple of sticky notes that came up here, I do encourage you to add sticky notes to these charts over here. They aren't just up for today, they'll remain up. And hey, John, since you have the microphone, can you read what they are, please?
So there's a blank one that says, "What I love about our church." I expect that will be filled up post-haste. Dividing proceeds. We have finance working group solicits your reaction to a 50-50 split of the sale proceeds, 50% to give away with congressional approval and 50% to support Wash Park UCC. That's the first I've heard of that. Criteria for a new location. This one has, worship space for 50 to 60 people, accessibility, piano and sound system, office space, fish storage and pantry, worship item storage, building access other than Sunday, kitchen, fellowship space, parking, including accessible spaces, accessible restrooms, opportunity to grow, evolve as church in the world, and flexible space for meeting Christian ed. Over here we have input questions regarding archway relationship and/or Mosaic Campus bookstore space in Founders Hall. Boy, that was word salad. Input questions for real estate group, which I guess is the catch-all for everything else you want to ask them.
Yeah, and if you are comfortable putting your names on any sticky notes or any notes you write up there that helps us get back to people. Now, the Plan B options, if you have ideas for Plan B options, please get those to Maggie. It needs to be more than just a, hey, have you considered 1678 South Emerson Street? We need contact information to be able to look further into any option Bs that come up. All right, Kathy.
Could they be a part of that?
Yeah, the groups aren't closed.
The groups are always looking for help. I can say that as a former committee chair. There's never anybody who's going to turn you down.
Thanks. Well then, thank you again, Russ, for joining us today and sharing.
Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. Please join me in the prayer of thanksgiving. Abundant God, receive these gifts of love from your servants and use them for the breaking in of your kingdom of love and light. In the name of Jesus, whose way calls us forth in service, we pray. Amen. And now, if you're ready, willing, and able to stand for our closing song.
Say
simply share with you that Laura Crosco is recovering from hip replacement surgery, hopes to move to rehab today, I think, and she was in better spirits yesterday afternoon, so continue to lift her up. And Kathy, round 2 later in March, I think, we'll be thinking about you as you get ready to start that race again. Our benediction: go forth to claim your belovedness, trusting that the God who provided Jesus with strength to overcome the temptations of the desert is the very God who will guide you and us, lead you and us this day and always as we dream God's dream. Amen. And now let's pass the peace. Greet one another. There's lots of food left. You don't have to run off. Well, what you think? Peace be with you.